Good morning, folks. It's about 4:22 in the morning. I guess I'm a little late for work. I like my hat. Get a good look at it. Distant relative of mine gave me this hat. It's beautiful. I loved it. It's got some nice embroidery of it. Doesn't really look like, I don't know what to say about it. Let's see. It's gun owners for Trump 2024. Look, I really want him back right now. No, I'm not telling you to put all of your faith behind this guy or to worship any man. Matter of fact, stop worshiping Trump. Look, he asked some questions and they were good questions. And I said, and I realized, well, what the heck? I tried to answer them in the video and it was just about impossible. You asked me two questions. One of those is it would help if I would identify who the Nazis are in Washington, D.C. And I'm going to do my best to explain this stuff to you because it is extremely complicated and difficult. There's so much to it. I'm hoping I can pack it in an hour. So this is basically what is a Nazi. And this is a Dr. John Taylor Kent channel. This is the Dr. Kent show. I am Dr. John Taylor Kent. My degree, I have 5 degrees. The terminal degree led me ultimately to become a corrections psychologist. I worked in the prisons. I worked across some broad bases. Now, I know what I'm talking about, but when it comes to what is a Nazi, I have to tell you, it is so complicated that you're going to have more questions when we're done with it, okay? All right, another good thing you folks asked us, could I identify specifically who in this last administration, who in D.C. right now is a Nazi, and who in the previous administration was a Nazi? And I think we need to go back one more administration to get to the real Nazi in the White House in particular. And so here's the wildest idea. I'm not sure about this. And I'm not afraid to say, hey, I don't know something. And I'm going to tell you, you need to do your own research. I worked hard for my education. Now, you've tuned into this channel. Okay, granted, I don't owe you anything. I worked hard. I worked really hard. It took me decades to come to the understanding I have now. And I don't have much time left. I'm towards my latter years for sure. So what I want you to understand is Nazi's a screwed up term. And it's a giant oh my God. Anachronism. No. Oh, what is the word? That's one thing about when you get older. Words become much more evasive. It's hard to track the little suckers down, and the harder you try, the harder it gets. You already have your alphabet soups. Generally, they're 3 letters. Nazis, 4 letters. So we're going to cover this in some depth because I'd like to know myself. And I'm amazed at some of the stuff that comes out of my mouth, too. You think you're amazed? Man, sit on this end and generate and go, where the heck did that come from? I have forgotten more than I remember at this point, for sure. I am on information overload as well. So what you need to understand is things are not as they seem. Not at all. The Nazi Party. The only Nazi party that called themselves a Nazi party was the American Nazi Party. And I think it was a bunch of bullshit to call themselves the American Nazi Party. I think it was a really dumbass idea. You had a former commander of the Navy, an officer with ranking, standing, and respect, decided to call himself the American Nazi Party. I don't even think he knew. And he's definitely not going to know everything that I tell you. Now, that was Lincoln Rockwell. Lincoln Rockwell adopted the name Nazi, and I think it was the dumbest thing he did. There was no such thing as a Nazi party. The Nazis, the people that you typically call Nazis because the controlled media has brainwashed you and told you what a Nazi is, those guys. The crazy thing is those guys are the real Nazis. The term was coined up, and it has a lot of meaning to it. And I think the jackass that coined it up, Conrad, I can't remember his last name, he was a gentleman of Jewish ancestry. However, he was clean-shaven in the picture that I collected of him, and I don't remember his last name. He coined the term Nazi after World War II. They didn't call themselves the Nazis, and I don't like it. When I hear somebody talk about Nazis, I write them off. So here I am talking about the term Nazis. Why do I write them off? Because I know it's bullshit. And I know the people that like to espouse that and believe that, they don't know what the hell they're talking about because they don't seem to understand the history of it. Now, I like Eustace Mullins a lot. The gentleman from West Virginia, I never got to meet him. I would have loved to have met him. He actually had, had a job working in the National in the Library. And he was receiving new manuscripts. So he was getting books before anybody else was. And he was reading them and classifying them. And he actually spent so much time in there that he set up a cot. He was sleeping there until the FBI escorted him off. They didn't like what he was doing, what he was writing about. The FBI are a bunch of Nazis. Get it through your head. Things are not as they seem. Your Joe Biden really is, he is a Nazi. He's the head Nazi right now. You need to understand that he's overseeing a genocide, and he's trying to genocide those of us who do this, who stand for this, who want to make America great again, who love the nation that we grew up in. Oh man, he wants to put us to death. He's already said we're basically enemies of the state. So you need to really be careful with all this stuff. And I know I should be careful as well, but I'm going to identify some Nazis for you. According to Eustace Mullins, the word Nazi, that man, it's too early in the morning for this. N-A-Z-I, the first two letters stood for the National Socialist Party. Their name that they called themselves was two words, and the initials for it were N-A, National Socialist Party. I don't know the word for the A. So that's the front end of Nazi. You got it? That's just half of the story. The back end of Nazi, the ass end, the Z-I stands for Zionist International, with an E on the end of International. It was an amalgam, an unholy alliance between the two. And if you want documentation about it, you can read the history of the joining of Adolf Hitler with the Zionists in Edwin Black's book, The Transfer Agreement. It is a very boring book, but the nice thing about it is it explains in detail what happened. And there were two different groups of Jews that wanted to represent all of the Jews at large, and they wanted to make a deal with Adolf Hitler because they wanted to get their assets out of Germany into the Promised Land, into the Middle East, so they could form Israel. Okay, you understand that. They wanted to get all of they were rich in Germany. The Jews that were in Germany loved Germany for the most part. But you had two different groups of Jews, generally speaking, okay. And one group was trying to represent Jews, and they were actually good people. They didn't do bad things. It's in the transfer agreement. And the other group They were bad people. And they murdered people. They murdered their fellow Jews to get what they wanted. Yeah, I know it's a long explanation, but you're asking me, and you're going to get everything I can get to you. So, you think I'm joking about the Nazis in D.C. You had one in the White House. Now, I need you to understand that this is a wild-ass idea. And I don't want to accept it, and you won't want to either. But you elected and put a man into office who was the grandson of Adolf Hitler. That's right. Yeah, Hitler actually survived and he had children. He had several children. And one of those children ended up producing Barack Hussein Obama. Okay? They've hidden his lineage from us because they don't want us to know the truth about him. I thought he reminded me of Lenin. He looked like Lenin. Chin up in the air, a little bit balding. I mean, he had a hell of an attitude, like Lenin. Real jackass material. So Biden, you need to think of him and regard him as a Nazi. That's what he's functioning as. So don't think of him. Analyze these things from function. Who's functioning as a Nazi? You've heard of Anthony Blinken? Have you heard of pipeline diplomacy? The man wrote a book in 1987, if I remember correctly. And it was about pipeline diplomacy. He didn't call it that, but I called it that. And he advocated for blowing up pipelines in order to rule the world. Guess who blew up the damn Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2? Mr. Pipeline did. He's a Nazi. You need to understand that. These guys are pretending. They're pretending that they're good guys. And, I mean, you're going to look at him and say, he's a neocon. Your neocons are Nazis. Your Bush family are Nazis. The last name was Scherf, S-C-H-E-R-F. Prescott Bush had some deep ties with Germany and helped finance Adolf Hitler. Not only that, he was the guy behind the takedown of the United States of America, the attempt that General Smedley Butler, the guy who wrote the book War is a Racket, that famous Marine general, that's what he revealed. And they weren't supposed to have anything to do with politics or with the office of the presidency as a direct result of them stumbling upon that. Smedley Butler, when he was recruited, he laid back, and he waited for these guys to reveal themselves fully. And when he did, he basically busted them. And these jackasses in the mainstream media that control all of your information and control you, and control me to a large extent. I got to admit it. I'm just a man as well. You know, I get fooled. Look, Conrad, when he come up with the term Nazi after World War II, when he come up with the term Nazi, the alliteration, the sound was like another word in German, and I didn't learn this word. It's been a long time since I read this material. But it sounded like a term that was bantered around in the southern part of Germany for nuts, crazy person, or a fool, low intelligence, imbecile sort of thing. So, you need to understand that there are two prongs to the spear at work in the world today. And this was discovered by Admiral William Guy Carr in His Majesty's Navy, a Canadian gentleman. And the year was about 1911, and he was getting recruited to help out with this, you want to call it the New World Order. There's nothing new about it, folks. Even that's a lie. It's the old world order brought forward. I tracked it down. These guys arrived here approximately 70,000 years ago. They mingled with us And it's going to be hard to separate things out, but you need to understand. The truth is in the Bible. If you read the Bible, you are going to be able to think much more clearly, and you won't be so readily deceived. And you'll have a chance. Why? Because the evil ones are reading the Bible too, and they're using it as a giant playbook to do their stuff, conduct their mischief. Because they want to be God. So they want to do all that bad stuff to you and me. Who isn't a Nazi is the better question. And if you go to Washington, D.C., the Congress, they're almost all Nazis. They function that way. They harm us. They purposely have allowed several frauds, perpetrated several frauds, and they enrich their own pockets. And if you want to get your government back, you are going to have to fight pretty hard for it. I don't recommend taking to arms. I just don't, because they control it all. They've got the military. The military right now is doing a massive program. A massive genocidal program. Most of you aren't going to be alive in short order. Me, I know it. I got it coming. You only get so much time for this ride around the sun. But you don't have it coming, a lot of you. You're much younger than I am. You got an entire life ahead of you. Or do you? Well, that little Department of Defense bugger that you all accepted, that's the problem. And this thing about blaming the Chicoms, that's kind of a problem too. It just shows the level of deception and the ignorance. I don't appreciate what Trump did, to be honest with you. He let us down in several ways. He never told you the truth about the money, that there is no money. I thought that he was actually going to come forward and tell you that we're going to go back to a gold standard, a silver standard. Kennedy tried to do it, and look what happened to him. Of course, maybe you're not ready for that yet. I don't think you are. And you prepare yourself by turning to the book, the foundations of all Western civilization. You call it the Bible. It's a collection of books. There's some books that didn't make it there. There's some books that have been removed. There's some books that have been screwed with, misinterpreted, words taken out, words put in, and even the order of the verses has been rearranged, is what I hear, in order to hide things. So I do have the best Bible in the world. Take the link down below. You want to support my channel, you want to support me, don't send me any money. I mean, I really appreciate the one gentleman who did that. Buy my Bibles. They're the best Bibles in the world. And yes, we can produce a better Bible, and we will. I'm seeing to that myself. But you need to get started. You have a lot to learn. You are way behind. The enemy knows who they are, and they know who you are. And you don't know who they are, and you sure as hell don't know who you are. And that's the shame of it. Once you find out who you are, then you will understand why they want to kill you, why they want to kill us. And don't go around trying to judge other people by your own goodness. Oh, everybody's like me. They would never do that. That doesn't make any sense. No, Dr. Kent, nobody would ever do that. Nobody in their right mind would ever do that. Look, the evil ones do that stuff. Sociopaths do that stuff. And there's an increase in sociopathy across the country as we deteriorate. As our culture declines, as they do this multiculturalism and everything else to water down and negate our culture, including tearing down the statues, changing our language on us, demanding that we think certain ways. It's really the beast system. You want to know about the beast system? It's in the book of Daniel in the Bible. He was a major prophet. That'll give you a good tutorial. And then we can proceed further. And yes, there's more to learn. More than what's right there in Daniel. Because it wasn't all revealed to him. I'll point that out in due time, but I want to get back on subject here. Who are the Nazis in Washington, D.C.? Almost all of your Congress. And you're going to say, how could that be? Well, it's really simple. There's things that I've heard over the years that just make more sense. It's just hard to remember them all. It's hard because there's so much to it. And the average man cannot comprehend this evil monstrosity in front of us. As a matter of fact, J. Edgar Hoover, who I happen to love to hate, by the way, because he was a real jackass, J. Edgar Hoover said that the average man is faced with an evil monstrosity so big that he denies it because it's beyond his comprehension. And if J. Edgar Hoover says that, you can bet that he was having trouble comprehending it. And he was right there establishing the deep state. Yeah, your FBI, bunch of Nazis. Just get it through your head. There ain't a good one. Good ones are supposed to come forward and turn in the bad ones. I think we're beyond that time. I think we get rid of the FBI completely. Your Department of Defense, who put that weapon together that they've been using on us and continue to foist off on us with their lies in the media. And, of course, we can't talk about a lot of things, so I'm not going there. And I would appreciate it if you wouldn't even put things in the comments that you know that these folks want to censor and don't want to come into light. So what you need to understand is in the Bible, Isaiah said there were good figs and there were bad figs. He was referring to the Jews. Okay? And I want you to understand there are good figs and there are bad figs, and it's quite accurate. There are good Jews and there are bad Jews. Now, Lincoln Rockwell thought they were all bad because that's all he could see was the dominant ones, and he was right on to the bad ones. He didn't have the big full picture. There was another gentleman at the same time who was preaching, Wesley Swift, and for some reason he had incredible information. But I'm a skeptic and I don't trust everybody that much. Wesley Swift rattled off and preached, sounded like a machine gun going off. I mean, it was really hammered away. It just penetrated your skull. He had a delivery that was unnerving, to say the least. It was irritating as can be. And he gave us all kinds of statistics, and he kept trying to advocate for war. And he had some ideas, as far as the scriptures go, that I question to this day, but I know of other people that really know his stuff better than I who adhere to it. So, J. Wesley Swift, George Lincoln Rockwell, I think was his full name, joined forces. And right after that, they both were murdered. At least that's my guess. George Lincoln Rockwell was killed. And we know that I believe it was a Jewish gentleman. Now, I got to be careful here, but I want to explain this to you so you will understand. In the Bible, in Revelations 2:9 and 3:9, it points out that there are those who say they are Jews and are not. And so I'm going to tell you that those are the problem ones. They're pointed out as written by John the Apostle in the book of Revelations, and he was taking dictation from the Messiah, from Yahshua, who you call Jesus. But in error, but that's the way it is. My other channel is Awakening Israel. We get more into Scripture. We get more into the details of the history. You probably aren't ready for it, and you probably would be offended by it. I will tell you, if anything in the Bible offends you, you have a problem, and it's your problem. There's plenty in there that has caused me some grief as well. So we have to work it out. So we have to read it and to our understanding. I'll cover that in the other channel. I need you to understand, the Nazis have taken over the United States of America. We didn't beat them. They didn't lose. They won. I remember as a little boy growing up, time after time in the movies, the Germans would say we would listen to the mastermind, and we marveled at his genius. And We were mesmerized. He worked it all out. He explained everything. And that bothered me because the key phrase was, there was no way we could lose. That haunted me. So how is it there's no way they could lose? Well, they did a real big psyop on the whole world. And they had a lot of backing here in the United States of America. You want to know a Nazi? Adam Schiff. Why do I finger him out? Because his father Jacob Schiff was head of the bank, the Kunlo Bank. What did Jacob Schiff do? I believe it's his grandfather, by the way. Don't hold me to it, go look it up. Jacob Schiff was responsible almost single-handedly for World War I. He started World War I. He launched that from our shores. He also launched the Bolshevik Revolution from our shores. And we let him do that. That was a long time ago. And they launched that mostly from Manhattan. And there were a couple of different revolutions, if you will, different levels over there. And you got the October Surprise, which surprised the original ones who took the place over. You need to understand, the evil goes deep. You might as well not separate it all that much and say, well, we need to go after the Nazis. You need to go after the neocons, too. They are the problem today. They want to start this war with Russia. And I know you think, well, they just want to wipe them out. Let's let them do it. We need to know something. They want to wipe you out. They want to wipe me out. They want to wipe us out. Because they know who they are, and they understand their nature, and they know who we are. And the problem is that we don't know a jack. In case you're wondering what we are, it's on the other channel, Awakening Israel. All of the Biden administration is pretty bad. They're mostly Zionists appointed to all of those positions. If not, then they're some of the greatest perversions possible, and kleptomaniacs. You know, people that can't stop themselves from doing crimes. He's done his best to destroy things. That's what they're about. They've destroyed all faith in our institutions, and some of those have gone right along with it. I mean, they've earned their stamp of disapproval. Probably the most hated body in the entire United States is that band of thieves we call congressmen. Yeah. I'm rather glad that they stood down the swamp creature. I wish they could get rid of the other swamp creature, who's also a Nazi, Ditch Mitch. You need to understand and look at them for the functioning and what they're doing. Mitch basically destroyed the country with that $1.7 trillion monstrosity. Yeah, that's on Mitch McConnell and Speaker of the House. Or, I'm sorry, the guy who moved into the Speaker of the House's office prematurely. I don't want him to be Speaker. I want Donald Trump to be Speaker. That's me. I want to throw a real monkey wrench in the monkey works. You need to know that Trump is owned also by Israel. Sheldon Anderson bought him and sold him. Sheldon Anderson owned Trump's ass. And as a result, Sheldon Adelson, he got a great return on his money. He got what he wanted. Trump gave him everything he wanted. He declared Jerusalem the capital of Israel. You need to understand something. There should be no Israeli dual citizens in this country. They have perverted things. The original 13th Amendment is still the law of the land, and there never should have been an approval for dual Israeli citizen. Those people are not loyal to the country. Look at the first guy for Homeland Security. Parents were Mossad agents, both of them. Grandparents were Mossad agents, both of them. Look at Barack Obama's lineage. Look at who they worked for. The CIA, which is basically controlled by the Mossad. They're all controlled by the same jackass in Rome, by the way. They're all centrally controlled by the Black Pope. He's the most powerful man on the earth. He controls all the secret societies. You do need to know that. And they gave you the name of Jesus. They formed to put forward the name of Jesus. And they call themselves Jesuits. They did that at a most opportune time. The letter J was invented. It became part of the English language. That's not his name, folks. That's why you want to buy my Bibles, so you can get to know his name. It's important. Yeah, it's a big bunch of deception they pulled on us, and they've used our Bibles and our big box churches to do it too. They've used our educational systems to do it. The media. They own it all. They've stolen it all. And don't tell me about the money. You don't have any money. They stole it all. They don't give you money. That's not money by biblical definition. And probably more importantly to you, it's not money by constitutional definition. They stole it all. It was a bigger plan than what you think. Adolf Hitler was a little cog in the machine. And he wasn't totally bad. He certainly wasn't as bad as what they made him out to be. But there is some evil behind him that was really big. The word is he also was a descendant of the Rothschilds. Who else was a descendant of the Rothschilds? What presidents have been descendant of the Rothschilds? Lincoln wasn't named after his father, but his mother. He took his mother's last name. Yeah, he was a Rothschild. The Rothschilds had their agent, develop our treasury system, basically develop our business system for us. Yeah, we need to thank the Rothschilds for that. Who was it that did that? Why, it was Alexander Hamilton, whose real last name was French, Levine, like Levine. And when they joke about him being a dark man, he was a mix. I believe he came from Jamaica or Haiti. Haiti it had to be, but maybe it was Jamaica. He came from one of those islands out there. He wanted George Washington to be king. He didn't want a presidency. And he was the guy who brought us the central bank and the banking tactics of his masters, the Rothschilds. Your Nazis are throughout your whole government, especially your State Department. It was the Nazis that interfered when Chiang Kai-shek was armed and troops were ready, and they were going to beat the Chi-Coms. They were going to beat the communists in China. They were going to win, hands down. But guess who stopped them? The people in your State Department. They got the president, they got our, whatever you want to call that monstrosity, that beast system that's in D.C., they got them to station the 7th Fleet between Taiwan, formerly Formosa, and mainland China. And they would not allow Chiang Kai-shek to go in. And in case you're wondering, Chiang Kai-shek was one of the people on the plane that went into Tehran when they were doing stuff towards the end of World War II. And he's been omitted from the manifesto. How do we know that? Crowley, what was his name? The pilot, the OSS Army pilot, Colonel Prouty. Yeah, he's on YouTube. You can go listen to it. The bankers Bankers are a bunch of Nazis. You need to understand they're the most ruthless bastards on the planet. They're responsible for this country's division. They did this purposely. It was the bankers, and they used their FBI and their secret organizations, and they used everything, including the CIA, which was the OSS, everything to start these weird little movements and spark the flames and put us at each other's throats. They did that purposely. Before the Great Depression, the bankers said they had us so divided that we would never be united again. They destroyed the staff of unity. You want to know about the two staffs in the book of Zechariah? Took two different staffs and broke them both, one being unity. Yeah, we are the Israelites here. We were founded by Israelites. Now we're mixed, very much becoming a mixed multitude, and they're using that to destroy you. It is a form of warfare. The Assyrians developed it and practiced it. In particular, you don't realize it. They've been doing this warfare to you in the entire last century. You're not in charge of this government. The electorate has no power. You're totally deceived and controlled. At this point, I'd love to be able to say the Chi-Coms own America, because that would be pointing to an enemy, one you can see, one you can put your finger on. And I know that's what you want me to do, is to identify the Nazis in Washington, D.C. They're all Nazis except for a handful, maybe two handfuls of Congress are not Nazis. I'd like to say congressmen, but people get upset by that. But, because I don't say congresswomen. You got Marjorie Taylor, whatever. Maybe she should be Speaker of the House. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Imagine her as Speaker of the House. Man, she wouldn't put up with this bullshit at all. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Or, you piss off Mama Bear, you're in trouble, because she'll take on the biggest bear. She doesn't care. She's going to kill him. And the women bears do have to do that, because the male bears will eat their own young. You need to understand something. The word Nazi has been bantered around to the point where it's meaningless. I prefer the meaning of the amalgam of the National Zionist, National Socialist with the Zionist International. And there was a coin minted. I don't have one. I wish I had one. On one side, you will find your swastika, which was borrowed from the old religions, a name for Buddha. I think they just changed the direction of the slashes, if you will. And it stands for life on Earth. Carbon has 4 poles in the atom, and that stands for life. It's carbon based on this Earth. And so when they tell you they want to reduce carbon, they really mean they want to kill you. Stop being foolish. Educate yourself and learn something. Where was I at? Zionist International. How did we get into World War I? We had a president we elected who promised he wasn't going to get into the war. That's because he was totally controlled by the honeypot system. Colonel Mandel House ran the damn country. And he wasn't a colonel. That was a lie as well. He came up with an ingenious way to get a man elected, get a man in office. He was a pretty smart dude. And they set up Woodrow Wilson with Mrs. Peck, a married woman, and I believe her husband was in on it, and our president wrote her love letters. So they had the goods on President Woodrow Wilson. And as a result, they got the central bank. You see, that's what they needed to be able to control this country and get us into World War I. They would not have been able to get us into World War I. And they've gotten us in all of these wars since then because they've got the money system going and they manipulate all parties on both sides. They put us at each other's throats. They set up these little executions to start off wars. They're the ones that set up the doggone famines. You know, the genocides, the Ukraine. They set that up. That was staged. Probably planned from Chicago or someplace. It was done. Probably from this nation. You need to understand, we started off as a great nation, a great country, and we have morphed into the beast system. And we are in the Bible as the great nation foretold in the book of Genesis. And we are in the Bible as Sodom and Gomorrah 2.0 to get nuked. The major prophets write about that in some detail. Yeah. It's described, and that's coming. And that's what the evil ones are doing right now. They're setting that war up in the Ukraine because they want to get you nuked. Why? Because they know you're waking up. They know you're figuring things out. And they know that if they don't take you out soon, that they are going to have too many of us to deal with. And so they got to whittle us down to size. However, the Bible does tell us that we're going to lose a bunch of people. We're going to lose a third. And right now, the guys, the medical doctors who are doing the autopsies are saying that 30%, they know the cause of death for 30% of the cadavers. 30% of those they're evaluating professionally, forensically. They know the cause of death. But they can't talk about it. And they're demanding that we investigate that. But you people are so slow that it's going to be too slow. And they've already done the deed. It's just a matter of time. Yes, there's things you can do. Chlorine dioxide. You know, drinking bleach. That's not what he was talking about. But chlorine dioxide will take out of you what doesn't belong in you. And so I got a few kits on the shelf. I've got to start taking it myself. Again, it will go after an infection that you can't identify. What doesn't belong in the body, it goes after. And anything that's been put in that shouldn't be in there, it'll go after. I'm going to be getting the kit out and assembling the materials so I can make it for myself. It's really cheap. It was developed by a physician. I met his son-in-law and the mother. And this fellow had developed this, and they sent this stuff over to Africa to combat AIDS. Okay? It's pretty simple. You put a couple of drops of things together, give it some time, and then you swig it down. And it's very easy. There's no side effects that I know of. There's no problems with it. I don't know if you'd want to take a lot of it, but that's what Trump was referring to early on. He didn't take a good stand on the 5G and gave that to us prematurely because it's part of their weapon system. The United States Air Force in 1974 said that their most powerful weapon was 5G. The guy who's telling me that is a little older than I am, and he was a ranger. And his last jobs as a ranger were working security for Bob Hope. He can tell you some stuff. And by the way, at the end of that war, the Nazis that were in Washington, D.C. brought in the Viet Cong, the regulars, and some Viet Cong, but they brought in the Vietnamese communist warriors and settled them in the country. They do that at every conflict. They did that at the end of World War II. They brought in the best and they settled them here. Operation Paperclip. And then at the end of the first Gulf War, George Bush Sr., may he rot in hell, he brought in 5,000 Republican Guard, the crack troops. And once he did that, he brought in another group of 5,000 of them. And I met two of those jackasses. And they identified themselves to me. And so there you go. Mr. Scherf, who you call Bush, Prescott Bush's grandfather or father, I don't remember. You need to figure that stuff out for yourself. I can't do it all for you. Definitely Nazis. That family. Brown Harriman, they were the powerful one. So the sheriffs were okay in terms of power, but it really came from Brown Harriman because they were bankers, major players in it. Schiff, Adam Schiff. I don't think he can tell the truth for anything. What the hell is he doing in the intelligence committees and all that stuff? What's with that guy who had the affair with the Chi-Com agent, who they rushed out of the country to protect her ass because she was an officer in high standing? He's still got a seat, even on the intelligence committee. He shouldn't be a congressman anymore. Folks, there's a thing before the Supreme Court, 22-380. 3,800, I think, is what the number actually is. But 380 stands out because it's a nice little caliber. It's a 9mm Kurtz, if you will. It was Adolf Hitler's favorite cartridge, by the way. He liked that cartridge the best. Mine hadn't been invented yet, but I like it. Well, actually, I think I'm going to the old 22. It really is a nice cartridge. They're doing the ammo shortage on us. They're going to make that illegal for you because they have to disarm you because they want to. They got to kill you. We here in this country, all that stands between the little guy outside and the rest of the world and these evil bastards. And the problem is that you're dumbass. You don't know what's going on. You don't know what a Nazi is. You don't understand the origins of it. You don't understand the big picture. You don't understand what's really going on in your own country. The people outside get better news than you or I do. I know. I lived outside of the country for 4 years of my life. I lived in Europe. And one of those years in Italy. And I happened to be in Munich. Went back up there for Oktoberfest. I thought it was a good idea. I met a bunch of GIs that were hiding in the shadows. They weren't coming out in the light. Why? Because they found out all leaves had been canceled. And as long as they didn't know about it and couldn't be located, they were going to party and have a good time. Why was that? The one guy says, I don't know. All I know is I've been painting tanks desert colors all week. Yeah, they were getting ready to go in there. And you can bet whatever the terrain of the Ukraine is right now, they're painting tanks that color. They want to go in. They're going to expand this as fast as they can. You need to shut it down. You need to shut it down. And if it's your survival, you cannot win this one, and you will not win this one. Russia has this one. They've been chosen to administer this blow to the Nazis and get rid of the Nazis in the Ukraine. In case you're wondering about the Ukraine, you go to my blog, givingpsychologyaway.com, and you will see tabs, a page. Up there at the bottom is the last one. World history in one photograph. Go look at that photograph. You will see the symbol that the Ukrainian military and paramilitary also wear on their unit patches on their shoulders. It's the symbol of ancient Khazaria. And then you will see the symbol of ancient Khazaria. Looks a lot alike. And it's on the flag. That's that symbol that you see on their flag behind President Zelensky, the most highly paid actor in the world. Yes, he is. Zelensky's a Jew. Yet his paramilitary groups, who are not independent, doing that on their own, those groups of Nazis, white supremacists, whatever you want to call them, I don't really care. They're funded by the rich Jewish oligarchs over there. Yet they're Nazis. How can that be? I talked a long time ago about they're playing Jew and Nazi in the Ukraine. And I mean it. But you got to understand, there's good figs and there's bad figs. And you better leave the good figs alone, because they got a large part to play, even though they're small. They got a large part to play in the future. It's in the Bible. Read it, educate yourself. So you got Nazi Zelensky with those Nazi paramilitary, and you have Putin identifying them for what they are. And the gentleman is right. Vladimir is right. And he's backed by the fellow Nazis here in the United States of America. I think Mitch McConnell needs to come out of office. I think Mitch McConnell, who says the most important thing, and they all agree, is supporting the Ukraine. You realize that Barack Obama planned that damn thing, set that up? By the way, these bankers planned these wars way in advance. At the end of World War II, the international bankers, the real Nazis, Supreme Command, they planned Vietnam and Korea before the end of World War II. How do we know that? Because in Subado Bay, when they were loading up the heavy equipment, according to Colonel Prouty, his buddy was an enlisted man in charge with the clipboard. He was in charge of loading up all those ships with all the heavy equipment. Everything. Ambulances, personal carriers, tanks, howitzers. And he made a remark to his friends. Colonel says he made an offhand remark about that's headed to the States. And the enlistment says, oh, hell no. They don't want to see that back there at all. He says, what do you mean? He says, well, it's going elsewhere. Where's it going? It's going to Korea, South Korea. It's going to Korea, and it's going to Vietnam. 1945. 2 decades, more than 2 decades. Look, folks, I need you to buy my Bibles. I need to make a buck here. And they're actually about half the price of the other people's Bibles. Mine is the best available, hands down. I need you also to, if you want the Apocrypha books, if you want to help with that project, I would love to find a sponsor out there, somebody to come up and say, look, I'll buy 5,000 of them and put the money down to get 5,000 of these printed up. Because if I hit the 5,000 threshold, I get to make it the way I want it. I want large print, 14-point font. I want it included in the Bible itself. And I want tabs, because you're going to need them, because those are books that are not very well known, not yet. So you call up named publishers and tell the office, put me on the list, calling from the Dr. Kent Show. I'd like to drop my name. And then tell them you want the Apocrypha. Give them, or email them. Give them your name and phone number. Get on the list. I need 5,000 people, or I need one person out there, one man or woman who has a lot of money, doesn't know what to do. And in which case, I would ask you to sponsor the Apocrypha books. What could you do? Well, I think you could make a good deal. I mean, why not? If you're going to invest that kind of money, that much money, shouldn't you make something on it? You know, I think that we could charge a little bit extra for that. And I think that we could take that a little bit extra and pass it on to the investor. We're highly motivated to get these Bibles out there. Prices are low, very low. Anything ending in 77 cents, I get a little credit for it, and I appreciate that. I probably have bought I hope it's not true anymore, but I probably have bought and given away as many as I've sold. But that's all right. And I don't want to say it's just for a good cause. It's the way to save America and save the world. In case you're wondering, there's a lot of incredible stuff in there. My view of it is that it holds the possibilities for our futures. And we get to play a role in working out our salvation, working out our futures. The evil ones don't want you to know that. They don't want you to read the Bible. Barack Hussein Obama said their guns and their Bibles. They cling to their guns and their Bibles. Well, folks, you all got guns. We got guns. But those don't defend you if you don't have a sharp mind. And the Bible will give you the sharp mind. All of our founders were educated on the Bible. They couldn't deceive us until they had worked on us through our big box churches and sold us a bad bill of goods. Yeah, read the Bible for yourself. When you read it carefully enough and long enough, you realize that we don't want to be celebrating Christmas. December 25th is not his birthday. That got foisted off on us too. In case you're wondering, I believe he was born on September 11th. They don't do anything for no reason at all. They have reason and method behind it all. April 19th. What happened on April 19th? Well, your FBI murdered 19 children. Yeah, in the nursery of was it G. Edward Murrow building, whatever it was, the federal building in Oklahoma City that the FBI helped bomb on behalf of the Clinton administration, that helped get rid of 480,000 medical records of Gulf War veterans suffering with Gulf War syndrome because they didn't want to pay the vets and make good on it. And in case you're wondering, it was radiation poisoning because of all the depleted uranium rounds that we were shooting. They were off-gassing bad stuff, and the guys were inhaling it. And they were coming back and giving their wives radiation sickness as well. That's what it was. And that's why that's their motivation for doing the bombing. Oh, and at the last minute, the day before, they moved in all the files of Whitewater, the Whitewater investigation. Gee, who benefits? You need to understand that you don't understand. You need to understand that they have us beat. They own it all. They bought the entire country. We have the best congressmen money can buy. Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens, said that, and he meant it back then. It's worse today than it was back then. All that money that goes to the Ukraine that we insist that we're not going to account, that's getting funneled back to congressmen. You can bet it. You can bet on that for sure. That's how they get rich. And all those weapons that are getting shipped over there that they don't want to track down and have an accounting for, you can bet that there's some money being made on the black market, and that goes to the same pockets. Just like Afghanistan, you can bet that stuff has been traded around and enriched those bastards in D.C. You want to get back at those bastards in D.C., you go back to a constitutional government, especially a constitutional Congress. No pay and no benefits for Congress. That didn't happen until about 100 years ago. They were not given any pay. Therefore, there was no need for term limits because it was considered a volunteer act. You gave your time to your nation. You served your country voluntarily at your own expense, like a Mormon missionary. And when you run out of money, you go home, back to your job. And so I say we take away their pay and their benefits, and we give them a simple per diem. We give them a little amount to defray the costs, not even to cover the whole cost. We give them enough to cover the cost of lodging and meals, room and board for the day served, and that's it. We don't give them any retirements. We don't give them any preferred medical program either. We take all of that shit away from them. That's what you want to do to get control of this country again. I think that's a full hour. I hope I haven't fully answered your question, and I hope I've motivated you to do your own research and to learn, and to, above all, read the Bible. Educate yourself. Read it for the history it is. Get into the Old Testament. You will learn from those things. You will think better and clearer, and you may be able to begin to understand the enemy. Yahweh bless.